Hello, I'm Enzo, and today I'll be playing more Gregtech New Horizons. There is a ton to get over in this episode, so let's get right into it. Starting out, I'm hoping to upgrade my hammer from stainless steel, or was it vanadium steel? I think Van was a bit faster, and now that I have access to vibrant alloy, that's what I'm going to turn it into. Unfortunately, it takes half an hour to make one of these things. I'm not joking. It takes half an hour at this tier. So yeah, I guess I'm gonna be mining for a while I work on that. However, there is one upgrade I can get in the meantime. There's this neat thing called the Traveler's Gloves that I can make, and by themselves, I don't think they actually have many uses, but I saw a video that had all sorts of cool tips and tricks, and one of them is to make these and combine them with redstone. By doing that, you can actually get a couple levels of haste. It doesn't seem to make too big of a difference, but anything will help me out at this point. Also, it's wild to see that I had 5 stacks of HV circuits here, considering I'm gonna run out by the end of the episode, by the way. I'm just gonna say that now. I didn't know I had that many in reserve. It's pretty crazy. Anyways, I needed to mine faster so that I could clear out even more areas to build stuff. This is what I needed to make, a massive farming section. This is to produce 4 different materials that will all be necessary later on. Wheat has all sorts of uses. I'm gonna mostly turn it into hempcrete. Glowstone, or glow flowers, have several uses. I need glowstone blocks for stuff way later on, and everything else it can do. On top of that, you can centrifuge glowstone to get redstone and gold. Sugar from sugarcane for TNT soon enough, and cotton to make, well, cotton products, string, and like woven fiber to make fake leather, since I'm definitely gonna need a whole lot more of that. So yeah, this farm is insanely important to set up, and it's gonna supply me with materials for a very long time to come. And that sugar production was pretty much the only bottleneck of what I was trying to make here. Alright, let me explain by pulling out another blueprint. This is to make industrial TNT. To make that, I need all sorts of crazy materials, including polyethylene, which isn't bad because I already make ethylene from my oil production. I route that over here. Gelled toluene. Yeah, I was saying like toluene or something like that. Forgive me for just butchering every single word, but like, these aren't normal words that you learn, so I can't help it. Plus, I just pronounce everything horribly. Anyways, the toluene requires sugar and polyethylene dust, so that's why I need, well, sugar and the polyethylene right there. Unfortunately, the gelled toluene is the slowest part of the entire process, and that's the bottleneck for making industrial TNT. On top of that, I require nitric acid, so I need sulfuric acid, and then nitration mixture, which is oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, all the good stuff. The process also outputs sulfuric acid, or diluted, which I can easily concentrate. Unfortunately, it's probably like dozens of hours before I actually realized to hook it up, so I lost a lot of sulfuric acid by avoiding it, unfortunately. Still, this setup is going to be insanely important later on in the video. Industrial TNT is useful for the implosion compressor as an alternative to all the other TNTs. It actually has the best efficiency, that's why I wanted to make it, and yeah, it's finally done. Next up, I'm actually going to do something I have never done before, activating one of these division sigils. So these things are from extra utilities. I've known about this for literally ever at this point, and I had to do a little ritual just like this. I have to kill an animal on a dark altar at night. It's simple enough and pretty neat effect, spawn some cursed earth. This vampire pigman is interesting because I can't really kill these guys. I've tried to kill one in the nether before. They're practically invincible. Normal attacks do next to no damage. The only real way to hurt them is actually with wooden weapons because they're vampires, or wooden sticks, stake. You get the point. Thankfully, it's only a tiny bit of environment damage, and my enchanting table is still there. With this sigil, I know you can make the unstable ingots and then turn them into stable ingots if you're fast enough, so I lose a 1/9 of the material here by making the semi-stable nuggets, but it's far, well, safer to do it this way. Long story short, I want unstable ingots. Now, I know these things are really good for making early game tools. I think they're unbreakable or something like that. I don't know, there's some reason to make these that's insanely good, but whatever, I don't care about that. I don't want it for the tools, or those at the very least. You see, I want these nuggets so that I can actually upgrade and, well, make a builder's wand, like a proper one. The one I've been able to make so far is diamond, and that requires a lot of diamond and then extruding it, which takes like half an hour, just like the hammer earlier. But with this, I'll be able to finally make an unbreakable wand. Unfortunately, all these processes will take a while. For some of the stuff I want to do in this episode, I am building this gigantic structure out in my base. It actually just barely touches my observatory. So, this is a 2 chunk by 2 chunk, so 32 blocks by 32, by 4 high slab of dirt. What can I possibly use this for? Well, you guys remember last episode when I wasted 30 hours breeding all of those crops? First of all, apparently it's truly wasted because the next update is going to redo crops, which kinda sucks. I'll have to figure them all out again. But it's exciting because it should be viable in the late game instead of bees now, so that could be interesting. Anyways, I want to start using some of those crops that I actually got. I don't need the spruce trees, but I got some other really good ones, like canola and goldfish. So those are seed oils, or oils for later on. And I have some other random assorted stuff that'll be helpful, including like paper and string. The string is going to be insanely helpful, even though I already made the cotton farm. One really cool plant I'm not going to use in this episode, but I'll definitely mention it in the next episode. It's actually salt root. Salt root is unique because you can make salt with it. You can get like rock salt, normal salt, and potassium or salt, pepper, whatever that stuff is. That's going to be helpful later on when I need to produce salt when I'm using it up. You guys will see in the long run. Anyways, the most important crop to note here is yellow stone lilies. These are one of the most powerful crops, especially right now. Unfortunately, I can't use their whole potential. The thing about stone lilies is that you can put a few types of blocks underneath them to get certain outputs. The problem is I don't have the right kind of block. I can use sand or sandstone right now. Unfortunately, that just makes the crop produce sandstone or sand, and I seriously do not need that. Very long story short, the yellow stone lilies won't produce the end stone dust that I want. I was dreading this because it means I have to go over to the end, naturally. So that led me on this massive journey to go ahead and find a dungeon and naturally travel to the end to kill the ender dragon. That works, but I'm mostly there for the end stone, funnily enough. What's awesome about this is that we have hardcore ender expansion. Now, fun fact, I've never played with this mod before, so I know nothing about it. All I do know is that even though I couldn't hear it this time, when I was in my testing world, it was playing like an instrumental mix of In the End by Linkin Park, and that was awesome to listen to. So that's my first favorite part about this place. Besides that, it's pretty awesome that the obsidian actually blows up and away from the pillars when you destroy them. It sucks because that's just a modded block, so I can't use it as actual obsidian, but I have like 30,000 obsidian in chests at home, so not like I need it. Because of my low difficulty and my super powerful armor, the dragon fight is no big deal at all. The dragon fight itself is relatively easy because I have my awesome nano suit. I love that armor so much, and this crossbow. I mean, this thing is an absolute beast. You can see when I hit the dragon, it just takes chunks off of her health. Yeah, I always forget it's female because she lays an egg. Funny thing about the egg, I may have forgotten to pick it up on my way out, so it's still there. That's one important thing to know about all this. I never came back to the end when I really should have, because apparently you're supposed to explore far out into the end because of the mod. There's like islands with rare ore. I don't remember all the different types, but I'm guessing there's something good for me there. All you should know is that I'm not going to be back here for the rest of this episode. I might go back next episode depending on if I need anything. Likely not. I guess we'll see. Again, I am just here to take some endstone and run. That's it. The farm is working very well, and I've gotten some other really cool seeds. There's stuff like nether wart, slime balls, which are very nice, and gas tier, so I have a source of those. More importantly, I got this stuff called Terra wart. I got a comment telling me about it, and it's pretty awesome. Terra wart is kind of like a stackable milk bucket. So it removes all your debuffs, and you can have stacks of it, which is very nice. On top of that, since it's a plant, it's very easy to grow and have infinite of, essentially. But I have to say, the funniest crop that I accidentally planted was a grape. Yes, the fruit. You see, I didn't realize the seed was called that because we all know what canola is called. So I planted that thinking it was canola instead, and yeah, now I have grapes. I mean, it's useless because I don't need food anymore. I just find that really funny. While I'm on this streak, I decided to spawn and kill a couple of withers real quick. I didn't realize this at the time, but it's really good I went for 2. I just happened to have the materials, that's why I did it, but it also gives you like an extra special quest reward. Either way, this crossbow is so stupid that it two-shot him essentially, and my sword did the rest. It's funny because I even forgot to put on my nano suit to protect me, which this is half the reason I made the nano suit, by the way, so that I could prepare for the Ender Dragon and Wither, but I don't even need it. That's pretty wild, I have to say. And this is without any like special buffs or magic. I don't even know what that would be, but yeah, I just wanted to say that's how powerful I am. It's ridiculous. What's awesome is that killing 2 of them allows me to, well, I don't know if I needed to do that, but it gives me something special. I think it is the ability to combine all of those quarter hearts I've gotten from killing mobs earlier and turn them into extra lives, which is awesome. I can also turn in the extra lives to get a red heart canister. So all very awesome overall. And thankfully, this mod pack has a backup mod, which is very nice. You see, I may have accidentally thrown my main backpack with everything in it into the cauldron when I was trying to create some ingredients. So yeah, don't do that. I will keep that in a different spot next time I'm doing magic. And let me reiterate it, I'll keep saying it, I hate magic so freaking much. It is the worst thing ever. You see, the only reason I was using the cauldron is so that I could make more nether stars. I kind of need them for my main progression that I really want. The problem is I need an insane amount of this catalyst stuff, and I really don't want to make it all. You see, again, I don't like magic, I'd rather not have to do it, but the alternative is go kill like 1 billion wither skeletons and spawn 9 withers, at least. I'm gonna need way more nether stars later on. So yeah, I didn't know this at the time, but there is a very easy way to cover your crucible using forged microblocks. Like, it's stupidly easy once I figured it out in testing, so that you can throw as much stuff in as you want in the crucible and it doesn't cause all of this goo. That's literally why I surrounded this place with cobblestone, by the way, to soak up all that goo and so I can destroy it. I mean, in a perfect world, I wouldn't have to deal with this stupid mod in the first place, but oh well. After seeing just how much of this stuff I would actually need to make enough nether star copies, I kind of just decided that, yeah, this is really dumb, and I don't want to do it, so I'm not going to do it. I gave myself a bunch of that salane, mucus, where the heck the dust stuff is that I can use to duplicate nether stars, and I'll deal with magic later on, but I really don't like dealing with it for now. It's way too stupid and complicated for me. I say stupid and complicated, I really mean convoluted, because haha funny magic, it has to be difficult to understand. Like seriously, why can't anyone just make a straightforward magic mod? Like, I love the tech mods in Gregtech, that's what makes it so fun for me, but the magic is just a drain. Also, since I'm guessing you're all curious why I wanted the endstone to make more endstone dust, it's because I can throw it in the centrifuge. It's like one of the best recipes in the game. It gives you a ton of helium, which I don't care about since I produce plenty of that already, but it gives me tungstate dust, which is insanely important later on, and platinum metallic powder dust, which is another insanely important dust. So it's just good to automate, especially with how easy it is thanks to those yellow stone lilies. Anyways, why did I need 9 nether stars? Well, I had to make these arm thingies to make the NASA workbench. and I'm guessing you guys all know where this is going. Yes, I would like to go to the moon in this episode. I mean, you guys probably saw that in the title and thumbnail. Whatever, here we are. It's finally time to get work started on it. Unfortunately, since this is literally rocket science, it is going to be some of the most insanely expensive stuff I've had to make so far, including diamond lenses, which isn't as bad as it sounds. You get like 3 of them from an exquisite diamond, and I have 111 of those in storage. Yeah, I've used a lot of diamonds in this playthrough. I've known that for the past few episodes, but when I have 100 exquisite diamonds in storage, it kind of puts it into perspective. I'm gonna mostly skip over a lot of what I need because it's like the same resources I've needed forever at this point, but there are some very special notes, like the fact I need another scuba helmet. Well, I wouldn't need another, but my original one has taken a lot of damage, and I really don't feel like repairing it, so I'd rather just make a new one. I also require a lot of reinforced glass plates, which thankfully I have plenty of reinforced glass from very early on, actually. These are going to be important for a couple of other things too. Long story short though, I need this scuba mask so that I can make an oxygen mask, cause yeah, breathing is pretty important, you know? On top of that, I've had to make a ridiculous amount of more wafers and circuits. I needed more wafers so that I could actually make specialized Galacticraft wafers, aka the basic ones, which require a reinforced glass lens, and I made some advanced ones. I think you need a couple. Honestly, can't remember what I needed for them, but whatever. I made them. They weren't the worst. But let's get to the part where things get truly expensive. You see what I have in my hands here? These are triple plates. Each one of these plates costs 3 ingots of, well, aluminum, bronze, steel. That's just the beginning. This is also the reason I made all of that industrial TNT and automated it because, well, I need to start using the implosion compressor. This is where it comes in very handy. I can use it to start creating all of my compressed aluminum, bronze, steel, tin, copper, you name it, later on. And yeah, this is essentially what I'll be doing for a while now. Thankfully, this machine is very fast and does things usually in batches of 12. I guess it's higher or lower based on the item, but it's still going to take a while considering how much I have to process. A lot of the other small stuff is relatively easy, but the oxygen tanks are quite painful. First of all, you can't make good oxygen tanks. Like in normal Galacticraft, you can easily just make the highest tier, and it's actually the cheapest, which is always funny. But no, of course, this is Gregtech. They nerfed that, so you can only make the worst ones first, and as you progress through the planets, you'll get better and better options. In the middle of working on my rocket, I would say I got sidetracked, but at the same time, this is kind of a necessity. You see, earlier on in this series, I've been using my LV wrench for the longest time, and that was the best wrench ever. It was super powerful and faithful. However, the upgrade to it actually happens to be way worse somehow. This, I think it's Damascus steel that I was using, is really bad. I don't know if Vandam steel would have been better for this. All I know is that this wrench broke way faster than I expected, and that's a major problem, of course. However, I finally have the ability to make vibrant alloy. That's what I did in the last episode. Vibrant alloy is one of the best things I can use for a lot of tools and stuff like that right now. So I decided to make myself a brand new wrench out of vibrant alloy. Because of how the HV wrench already betrayed me by breaking super fast, I was a tiny bit skeptical, but I don't know if it's something to do with 3 times durability, or it's just a better alloy and it has a better modifier or what, but this thing broke extremely slow, and I still have plenty of durability on it way later on. So yeah, amazing upgrade. The craziest part is that for the longest time, it didn't even seem to be losing durability, which is pretty awesome. It also has twice the speed, which is very nice. Well, it's a double-edged sword. You see, higher speed is nice, but kind of sucks if you're trying to do like precision and taking certain things out of a building, because I have accidentally broken like entire lines of pipes at this point because it's so stupidly fast. There is a ton of stuff to explain for this section, Essentially, I was starting work on Ender.io, and since I want to make Ender.io conduits eventually, I had the bright idea to make a ton of binder conduit early on, because that's what you need for it. I may have mildly forgotten that I'm playing Gregtech, and the recipes are just gonna be all over the place. So, I made all of this conduit binder for literally nothing, which is tragic because it cost a lot of resources, including like rubber, silicone, and clay. Okay, maybe not silicone, but it really sucks that I wasted all of those. The funniest part is how I didn't even get much into Ender.io. I will a tiny bit later for the item conduits because those things are stupidly powerful here. But the reason I wanted power conduits is so that I could use RF instead of Gregtech EU. And why would I want RF when I'm loving the current power system? Well, other modded buildings that aren't from Gregtech can use RF instead. Okay, this is gonna get hard to explain. Let me start from the beginning. Besides all of the rocket components I'm building, one of the major things I need to work on is actually oxygen. Because, you know, that's mildly important to survive in space. And since all the oxygen processing is done in Galacticraft machines, I have to use RF. I can pump in Gregtech power, but it's really inefficient, I think, and you waste a lot. Especially because the Galacticraft machines take so little power, it's actually quite funny. I'm just used to dealing with, you know, thousands of power at this point and just chewing through fuel. Meanwhile, the Galacticraft machines use like no power at all. It's hilarious. And yeah, I wanted to get some lower power tier conduits, I guess, so that I could make an energy network and establish oxygen up in space. That was the initial plan before I actually learned about something a billion times better for oxygen. I'll get to that when the time comes though. One of the most interesting things I learned in this episode. So, a while back, I placed a massive chunk of, well, loaded chunks around my base so that everything here is running constantly, which is very nice, so my factory never shuts down if I leave. The only slight issue is that you can only have 50 chunks claimed at a time with server utilities. I think it's 50. Now that I think about it, this should only be 25. Maybe it's 30. I don't know. There's a very low upper limit, and I reach it every single time I go out to place more auto miners. That is naturally a major issue. To solve this problem, I'm going to be making chunk anchors, which are chunk loaders. I'm making the personal ones because I don't need other ones. I'm not in a server or anything like that. And I'm making coins to actually power them. You can use ender pearls, but they don't give that much time. The coins require liquid ender, which I have tons of from previous episodes, and can give me up to 80 hours currently. I can't make higher tier coins until I get higher tier assemblers, unfortunately. Naturally, I'm still working on the rocket, and the major holdup is actually some of the odd parts that I need for other components. I have all of the rocket alloy itself, that was the easiest thing, but now I need like open computer stuff, which is, yeah, it's a nightmare to make, all sorts of circuits and stuff like that. Keyboard, you guys remember that from earlier? Like 100 keys, or buttons in this case, it's ridiculous. I made a bunch of computer displays, which will actually come in handy later on, so kind of a win there because I made a ton of all the different things for those. It's just getting ridiculous. But thankfully, I already had some of the things I needed in storage. There's like steel firebox, and that was in one of my old Steam machines, so very nice. On top of the insanely cruel recipe of this thing, I had to make it in an assembler inside of a clean room. That's brand new, and really sucks because I had to move an entire assembler all the way to my clean room. But the rocket control computer is one of the last few things I'm going to need for my rocket itself. I still have to make a bunch of other random things like frequency modules, which besides for healing, I need it to make the actual rocket lander itself. That's pretty important. Okay, it's finally time to get to the oxygen question. You see, I was originally thinking about doing a standard oxygen, well, absorber, collector. Yeah, it's been so long since I played a Galacticraft, and that's why I was dealing with all this silly power stuff, because I didn't actually know how it all worked. Conveniently, you can use RF to power all of your machines, or EU, but what's awesome is, like I was saying, they use so little power, you can legitimately use LV batteries to power these things for hours. It's pretty awesome. The best part, though, is that I found an even better solution to oxygen management. Instead of having to deal with collecting oxygen from leaves, which means I'd have to set up a bunch of infrastructure, I can actually use liquid oxygen, which I've never played with before, but it's super easy to work with. Of course, I can use my lovely vacuum freezer as a very easy way to make liquid oxygen, because you'd normally have to do like way later Mars and stuff like that to get liquid oxygen, but thankfully we have the power of Gregtech here. The coolest part is that a single liquid oxygen tank can fill 12 light tanks, which is pretty awesome. Obviously it goes down as you get larger capacity tanks, but considering this is all I have for now, that should mean I only need a few things of liquid oxygen for me to survive hours on the moon, which is very nice. And obviously I'll bring all of this stuff with me and an entire stack of liquid oxygen, so I will be perfectly fine oxygen-wise. In between working on all of the rocket stuff, you can see that I've made some improvements to the base. I've added more windows, increased the height of it a tiny bit. I also decided to build this. I said I was gonna do it. Now, this is nowhere near close to scale, but I wanted to try and make the Tower of Babel, like I said in a previous episode. Now that I see it, it doesn't look that good, but I believe I'll come back to it at some point. I think by using dark concrete, I could make a cool double spiral effect and it would look way better, as well as increasing like the barrel on the top. Either way, I'd say it looks pretty cool, and this is where I'm going to be basing all of my rocket operations. Also, I have to admit that spiral kind of looks sick descending into it, but I think it's finally time to get this show on the road and get into space properly. Thankfully, filling up the rocket was super easy. Unfortunately, I wasted like 7 kiloliters of fuel, which I'm using my cetane boosted diesel, by the way. That's kind of the reason I made it. I made it originally because it's such a powerful fuel source. Once I realized it could be used as rocket fuel though, that's pretty awesome. Anyways, I've gotten everything I need, tons of batteries, oxygen equipment, plenty of backpacks and chests. Unfortunately, you can only hold 4 backpacks at a time, kind of makes sense, so I stored them in chests. And before you comment, I'm pretty sure it is possible to infinitely, nest? Is that the right term for it? Chests? For like infinite portable storage? I'm pretty sure. That'd be awesome. My only real regret is not transforming all of my generators to fuel instead of gas. I did not bring enough, benzene for this entire trip. I wanted to mine a whole lot longer than I got to, pretty much. But now, it's finally time. With everything ready, my rocket loaded, I'm going into space. After, I don't know how long at this point, but it's practically 600 something hours at this point, which is pretty insane to think about. And this first launch is so exciting. Unfortunately, most of this trip is going to be me flying into space, but yeah, it's pretty awesome to see the world fade in the distance. One of the things I saw before launch was also the ability to make a space station. Obviously, I know about this, I've played plenty of Galacticraft before. The most interesting thing is that it takes like 231 tin decoration blocks. Those things legitimately take compressed tin plates. So that would be like thousands of tin to make a space station. That is before I remembered, you can just loot those villages on the moon. So it's not nearly as expensive as I thought. I definitely will be making space stations at some point for like gas pumping and other stuff later on. Anyways, it's time to go to the moon, and it looks very weird. So I should note this right now. It's my shader pack that makes the moon look so terrible. Yeah, you're not supposed to have those on here because the moon does have a day-night cycle. I'm also playing on peaceful, so we won't deal with any mobs. I'm legitimately just here to mine resources. And of course, I have to clear out the moon dungeons. I'll enable normal mode for those. But yeah, the moon is going to look really weird because of my shaders. And I have a feeling that's what's messing with the lander here too. Things are getting really weird, I have to say. You know, for how epic I wanted to make this entire moon segment look, I'll be perfectly honest, it's actually not even that interesting. My entire goal here is just to mine all sorts of new resources, like ilmite, whatever that stuff is, bauxite, monzonite, and some other crazy ores. Essentially, I need to get all of these so I can bring them home and refine them into titanium, which is the next major resource I need to get into EV and, yeah, progress, essentially. There's no other way to get it. Well, you could do bees or crops of some sort, but you get the point. This is how I'm going to get my titanium. Unfortunately, this is just going to be several hours of me running around the moon, literally babysitting all of these miners. Well, mining drills, I guess. It sounds weird the first way. But yeah, I gotta check up on all of them, keep the fuel high. It's not interesting at all, I assure you. And like I said, I went to one of the moon dungeons. You're actually supposed to pick up a piece of brick to complete some of the missions. Funny thing, I did not. But thankfully you can laser engrave some of the moon rock and get these bricks, so that's nice enough. Of course, the whole place was an absolute breeze because of my weapons. I mean, I'm not complaining. It's very nice to feel overpowered for once, especially in a pack like Gregtech where everything feels like so far out of reach because of how complicated it all is. But yeah, the boss fight was stupidly easy. This sword is just ridiculous. Alright, I'm gonna re-record this part real quick. This is at the end when I'm finishing editing, because I was originally talking about how I thought this was Astroneer music that they used in space here. Honestly, it sounds exactly like Astroneer. That's why I was confused. I am pretty sure it is from Galacticraft, or maybe even Gregtech itself. I'm not actually sure what adds this specific music, but if you hear it, you'll kind of understand what I'm saying. If you've played Astroneer, it sounds way too similar, and I really thought it was at the time, but I don't think it is. Maybe someone in the comments actually knows what this is. It's around this point that I finally realized the main problem with the look of the moon, and I turned off my shaders. It looks infinitely better, aka normal. I love the look of the moon normally, but Gregtech makes the sky beautiful with all of those like galaxies and space dust. I don't even know what those are all called. Constellations? No? Whatever. It looks awesome. I'm having such a good time here. Even though what I'm doing is stupidly boring, still, I'm just excited to be in a new area for once. I also decided to do some manual mining on the more important resources, and I may have been throwing out all of my moon rock, just into the trash can, when I realized I am dumb. That's like a really bad thing to do because this is Gregtech. I can actually pulverize moon rock and centrifuge it to get rare earth, PMP, which is platinum metallic powder, which is insanely rare and important stuff, and tungstate dust. I was kicking myself at this point because I was just thinking, oh man, I've wasted so much good stuff. Even though those chances are stupidly low, I can still get that as a bonus. So yeah, important thing to note there. I definitely did not bring enough storage for this trip though. I will need to figure out a better way next time I go into space. Another fascinating thing about the moon, and probably space as a whole, is that we actually get aura nodes just like the overworld. So that's interesting. I guess it would probably be worth it to go into more magic, because I know you can get like jars, or you have to build jars around them, and then you can like take these nodes with you home and combine them at your base. Again, I don't know how any of Thaumcraft works, but it's probably important to learn some of that stuff because you can do insane things with Thaumcraft. One of the coolest finds was a hungry node. Now, I've heard of these things. I'm not 100% sure how they work and like what's so special. I think they have more like magic in them, but they consume blocks around them as a downside. So pretty cool to see in the wild. First of all, you can't see a lot of the information in the top left because the oxygen tanks block it out. That's a little bit annoying. But the days are very different on the moon than from Earth. I'm not sure how the year system works. I can't actually see what year it is. But anyways, we're about like 100 days early on the moon compared to Earth, something like that. I don't know about year again. But once I returned to Earth and calculating all the time, I spent about 8 hours on the moon, which is a while, but my supplies lasted me super far. I still have plenty of stuff to survive on the moon, which is awesome. But it's finally time to return home and actually start using all the resources I've collected. Alright, I don't remember all the names of the resources, but there's a ton of good stuff that I got. A lot of it is stuff that I can turn into titanium, which is obviously what I need for EV. That's going to be like immolite or ilmite, whatever that stuff is, bauxite. I think those are two primary ones that give it. Then I got a ton of meteoric iron. This is in Galacticraft normally, but obviously it's a Gregtech version, which you can also find in small ore chunks instead of veins. That's why it's super helpful to have the Gregtech miners. And then there's this resource called moissanite or something like that. I heard it's used for some sort of processing line later on. I can turn it into rare earth, and then obviously the rare earth 1, 2, and 3 for different very high tier resources. There's also a bunch of quartz of different types, like Certus quartz, which is going to be very important for upcoming Applied Energistics. And finally, chromite, which I can turn into plenty of chrome, which is awesome. Now that I've actually done this entire line, and it's been dozens of hours since I built this, I definitely understand that I didn't need to make it this complicated to process ilmenite, because you see, when you first make this stuff, you have to use an electric blast furnace to smelt the immolite dust into rutilite dust, which is how you get your titanium. You see, the better strategy is once you get a tiny bit of titanium, make yourself an EV chemical bath so that you can use sulfuric acid to process the ilmenite ore a bit earlier so you don't get the stupid dust and you get rutilite out of it pure. It's actually a trillion times better, and I don't need that massive blast furnace setup. So that's the first problem with this whole thing. Second is that I used gas turbines for my power, which means it's gonna chew through my benzene. Like, I have over 48 million liters of cetane boosted diesel in reserve. I don't know why I didn't use that yet. That's one of the biggest problems here, actually, and why I couldn't have it running 24/7. On top of that, this is a good setup, except for the fact the logistics pipes don't seem to work well with multiple item inputs for some reason. Of course, this is the first time I've ever seen this mod, so I don't know too much about it. But yeah, that was one of the other major bottlenecks of this whole system. It sucks, trust me. Now that the system is about done, let me explain how it all works. Of course, we start out by getting the rutilite dust through the electric blast furnace, combining immolite dust with carbon. The next step is throwing it into a chemical reactor with even more carbon and chlorine. Both of these processes create carbon monoxide as a byproduct. I'm just gonna throw that into a tank and just delete the overflow, since I don't think you need that much of it. And finally, I have to throw that liquid into another electric blast furnace with magnesium to get my hot titanium ingots and magnesium chloride, which I'm just gonna filter out and throw into a bin for now. The smart play would be throwing that into a large chemical reactor with sodium and then electrolyzing salt to get my chlorine back. So it does self-sustain. I definitely should have made that because I eventually backed up with like 10 stacks of that dust and was completely out of chlorine. Anyways, it's finally time. I have gotten my first batch of titanium ingots. This is awesome. I can finally make some meaningful progression at this point. The absolute first thing I needed to make, now that I have titanium, is an upgrade to my backpack. It's mostly filled with junk, I'll admit, but yeah, I'd really like a storage space upgrade. I don't know if I've mentioned it yet, I actually can't remember, but think back to the first or second episode, it was probably the second, when I was setting up a bunch of farming stuff. I actually built a whole plot of candleberries. That was, hundreds of hours ago, and it was for this moment, because I need wax to make hardened leather. There are a couple ways to make wax. You can obviously use bees, or you can use candleberries, and that's exactly what I'm going for. So yeah, hundreds of hours of preparation right there. Alright, I think it's time to explain my entire plan for this section, and this is actually the clip where the mistake starts. You see, I wanted to make an EV energy hatch so that I could really start upgrading some of my machines, especially my blast furnaces, and that's where the trouble began. You see, my whole plan was to start using the cetane boosted diesel for EV. That's one way to do it. Obviously, in EV, you're kind of not supposed to use normal fuels. You're supposed to go to nuclear, which I'll get to eventually. Trust me, that's for next episode. For now, I'll be using HV and transforming it into EV so that I can use like assemblers and laser cutters to make some of the parts I need. Okay, but that's not the most important part. You see, the misunderstanding stems from what I thought was required to make the EV energy hatch. You see, I looked at the recipe for a split second, but I didn't look at one specific part. Those coils. You see, I thought the coils were gonna be nice and easy. They're blue. I seriously thought for some reason those coils cost blue steel. I got that mixed up with tungsteel. You know the problem here? I am like miles, no, not even miles, like honestly, I don't even know what the right, distance here is. I am years away from getting those EV coils, by the way. And this leads me down a crazy rabbit hole that's gonna change absolutely everything I do. And long story short, I'm not even gonna get to make those EV energy hatches this episode, because yeah, they're so far out of reach, it's ridiculous. Well, after the realization of I need tungsteel, I am in for a world of hurt, to say the least. Tungsteel is not actually possible for me to make right now. Why is that? Well, I need to upgrade my electric blast furnace. You see the problem there? The next tier of coil is a resource called TPV. It's titanium, vanadium, and platinum dust. You see the problem? I require pure platinum. Now, technically, and this is like super technically, I could smelt the platinum metallic dust I have in my electric blast furnace. That gives me pure nuggets. I can always combine the nuggets into ingots or just, turn them all into dust. So that's one way to get platinum dust. But the proper way to get the platinum dust is through the dreaded plat line. And what's even more terrifying is that I'm not even going to do the full plat line yet. From one of the videos I watched, the dude calls it the baby plat line. It looks terrifying to set up. However, I won't be working with platinum in this episode. That's absolutely something to dread for next episode. For this episode, I'm actually going to be working on the tungsten line, which is also quite terrible to deal with. Of course, I still can't use tungsteel. Even though I can make it, I need to upgrade my blast furnace first, but I might as well start producing it since I'm gonna need it either way. And after scrolling through recipes for the longest time, I really thought it was gonna be impossible to make tungsten. There's just one slightly technical detail that you need to know. The large chemical reactor. You see, I need one of the recipes in here to be EV to process tungsten. The problem is I can't make EV energy hatches without tungsten. So the solution is actually overclocking these with 4 generators. Thankfully, large chemical reactors have what's called a perfect overclock, where it gives you the 4 times bonus instead of just the 2 times for all that power. So this is how we're gonna get an EV LCR. And of course make our tungsten. This is still a long way off though. You see, the main issue with getting to the EV age is just how much stuff it unlocks. Like, actually, I can't believe I'm saying that's a problem, but it is. There are so many things that I can do now that it actually overwhelmed me, and that's why my progress has been going so slowly. I just don't know what I want to do. That's the issue. So I'll explain everything I'm doing in a bit, but first I'm making some HV superconductors. This is so that I can save a ton of power throughout all of my building setups, which is always very nice. especially considering I am just wasting my benzene. I should have converted all machines to cetane boosted diesel a while ago. Alright, but out of all of my options for what to do, I decided to go with the most important one next. That is Applied Energistics. Yes, now that I have titanium, I can finally get into the most important mod in Gregtech. Okay, maybe besides Gregtech itself, but you get the point. Applied Energistics is literally required if you want to get anywhere past EV. You see, I've been doing everything by hand at this point. Well, that's not done by machines. I'm talking about like crafting everything, but it's really stupid to do that. You really need to automate like everything. This is an automation pack after all, but I don't play games like that, if you couldn't tell. And yeah, essentially I need to start making all sorts of Applied Energistics stuff. Unfortunately, because this is Gregtech, everything is going to be insanely expensive. It's not even funny how difficult everything is going to be to make. Like, every single part is just pain to produce. It requires all sorts of different circuits, especially the new Applied Energistics ones. I need tons of solar grade silicone, which also has to be smelted. Not to mention all of the like quartz I'm going to need, and that's every single type of quartz, by the way. I need nether quartz, I need certus, I need quartzite. Like, I need so many different things, it's not even funny at this point. So yeah, I'm gonna be working on that for a while, likely the rest of the episode. And I haven't even mentioned making all of the circuits and quartz stuff. So, to make the charged certus quartz, you don't actually use a charger anymore. I guess that makes sense. Of course, it's got to be some crazy recipe with Gregtech, but I actually like how they do it. There are several ways, but I decided to go with using the chemical reactors, I guess, to make the charged certus quartz dust. I think some sort of the dust. You have to combine nether quartz dust with redstone. That's easy. And then you need to combine that with some distilled water and sodium dust in a chemical reactor to get the full crystals, which is very nice. So these are all easy things to make. I can appreciate that. All of the different Applied Energistics circuits require solar grade silicone and, well, gold diamond quartz based on whichever one I'm making. It's not the worst, the recipes just take a while. And molten redstone if you're going the Gregtech machine route. You can always go the Applied Energistics Inscriber, but that's way slower than using just a Gregtech assembler with molten redstone. It's such an easy path. I also haven't even mentioned that I'm going to need item circuits as one of my parts, or that's something to do with it. These require different things based on what you're trying to make. In this case, it's item circuits, but eventually I'm going to make fluid circuits, which don't even get me started on those. They are insane. But for these, I need redstone, well, red alloy to turn into the, well, I don't remember what it's called, but like red alloy foil that gets put in the laser engraver to make these chipsets. Then I need to engrave gold in the laser engraver. Yeah, it's getting ridiculous. And this isn't even close to done. To top it all off, making all of these item circuits and then the storage parts is going to chew through circuits like nothing else. Having to make more circuit boards is bad enough because I'm not producing older varieties like these wooden circuit boards, but those are required to make certain things. But I literally had to make like 4 stacks of HV circuits and 16 stacks of LVs. I think it was like 32 ULVs. It was pure insanity, I have to say, but also kind of fun at the same time. A little bit later, I actually got distracted and decided to make a quick little titanium tungsten setup. And this time, yes, it is being powered with cetane boosted diesel. I learned my lesson from the titanium setup. But to make tungsten, it's pretty ridiculous, I'll be perfectly honest. It starts out with tungstate dust, and you actually need an EV autoclave. The tungstate, well, it's like tungstate lithium dust, goes in with water and sodium. Those are easy enough to procure. Then it goes into a large chemical reactor with some sort of chemical. I honestly forgot what it is you even make, but you throw that in a chemical into a thing, you get another thing, you put that in the second reactor. I also don't even remember what the component is. Whatever, it's essentially like a self-filling loop, which is very nice because it outputs the chemical for the first one. Whatever, it's processed into LCRs. Then I gotta throw it into an electric blast furnace to get the first product and throw it into a second electric blast furnace to get the finished tungsten. And I have to say, this is the most painful part of the entire process, how stupidly slow these ingots are. And there's part of the issue. So I made these obviously overclocked blast furnaces because I kind of had to. It wasn't working without the overclock, but I realized way too late that I accidentally went for the wrong process. You see, I am making full-blown ingots here, which takes several times longer because tungsten has a stupidly high melting point. I think it's literally over 6,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Might be 6,300 or 2, whatever. It's insanely high. That's why it takes so long. But some of you guys might have noticed something. I am making tungsten ingots. You see the problem here? I don't actually need those. They will certainly come in handy at some point, sure. But the thing I would actually want to make is tungsten dust, which is the infinitely easier and faster recipe, by the way. That's what's intended with this setup, but whatever. Either recipe I want to make though, the entire setup is finally complete, so I have tungsten processing ready to go whenever I need it. The only problem is actually getting the tungstate lithium dust, because that stuff is insanely rare. Thankfully, there are a couple of recipes that do require the tungsten ingots, like gears, and I know it's like a really tiny thing, but I can actually make light bulbs with tungsten wire, so that's an option. It has to be, you know, the fine tungsten wire. So it worked out in the end either way. It has been a long time since I started up my whole titanium production. I seriously have no clue why I didn't just make this whole final setup like at the start, because man, I have so much magnesium chloride at this point, and that is literally where all of my chlorine is right now. I have none left in storage. Also, I don't know why I had issues with multiple input hat buses with my with one of my electric blast furnaces, but it does work with multiple input buses for most other machines, and way later on I swapped this to have an input bus for that magnesium chloride and sodium, so that they don't get mixed up and one doesn't back up. But this setup is extremely simple. It combines sodium with magnesium chloride to get, well, my chlorine and magnesium back in the form of salt, obviously. The salt is then electrolyzed and the magnesium is thrown into a bin. This is all thanks to the beautiful power of Ender.io conduits and filters. These things are amazing, and I see why so many builds use them now. Unfortunately, the Ender.io conduits cannot be built like usual. You actually need pulsating iron plates, which is just ender pearls and iron, and then electrum pipes. So they are quite expensive to make. I don't remember if there's another thing you need in that recipe, but you get the point. It's pretty complicated. I also finally made a setup for a resource called styrene butadiene, something like that. I don't know. It's a type of rubber, essentially. Compared to all of my other options, it's relatively cheap to make, and I had to make this because, well, I'm out of standard rubber. Yes, I literally ran out. I mean, sure, I could just automate sticky read. That's actually probably the smart way to do it, you know, but oh well, here we are. Thankfully, I have butadiene. You can refine it from naphtha. Naphtha is one of the products I create in my oil processing area, and I normally distill it to make benzene, which goes back into my network, but this is the other option for that, turning the butadiene into, well, this whole abomination. It's a long, complicated recipe, trust me. As I'm slowly working my way into Applied Energistics, there are a trillion things to explain. First of all, I'm gonna have a ton of different wires running throughout the base, and the interesting thing about wires is that they do not connect if they're different colors. Except for the Fluix cables, which are the default ones, they connect to everything. So for that, I decided to work on a ton of dyes. This is before I learned about the color applicator, but I'll get to that in a minute. This is also kind of important. Using salt and sulfuric acid, along with dyes or whatever's used to make that dye, you can actually duplicate dye, which is very nice because, well, I put all of this into cans so that I can spray stuff and change the color, or I can always remove that fluid, throw it into a fluid solidifier, and boom, I have double the amount of dye I put in. Of course, it is a little painful to use salt and sulfuric acid, but I'd say it's worth it, especially if you don't have any other good way of getting dye, like the rainbow cactus, which I would like to figure out at some point because that sounds really cool. But yeah, this is how I'm gonna get all of my colors for now. Alright, it's time to get to another extremely important part about EV. Of course, there's another, or probably 1,000 resource loops, I guess, but this one is known as the radon loop, or at least the first way I can get radon. Essentially, I need radon so that I can make an improved ender eye, which I need for crafting sensors and emitters. The problem is, it's not easy to get. It is a stupidly complicated process that I actually started a while ago. The first thing I have to do is throw crushed thorium ore into a chemical bath. Well, I'm actually using the chemical bath with sodium persulfate to get uranium ore, or uranium dust. That's my primary source of it right now. But I want the purified thorium. That thorium ore is then thrown into an HV sifter. It really sucks. It will not work at MB, trust me, I tried. And with that, I can actually get a different byproduct out besides just thorium dust. It has a small chance to give you lead. Thankfully, you always get your thorium, but you have a very tiny chance to get radon. It's radon dust, of course, and this stuff is very unique. You see, to handle it, I actually have to have my nanosuit on because it gives me hazmat protection, and I need to throw this into a special box called a lead-lined box. I guess that kind of makes sense. This thing is extremely expensive. It requires, well, okay, the plastic and all of that, chest, everything, those are cheap. It's the lead plates, which are dense, so they require, I believe that is 9 lead per plate. It's like 16 of those or whatever. It's stupid how expensive this thing is. All of this work just to get a tiny bit of radon. And once you're done waiting about 20 minutes, the radon actually decays into a safe powder that you can move, then you have to electrolyze it. For fun, I also wanted to see what happens if you transfer radon without the hazmat suit, and let's just say I messed around and found out. It gives you a permanent radiation debuff. It's obviously meant to kill you. I don't think there's any way to cure it, at least none that I know of. Even putting on my hazmat suit does nothing. So yeah, I am literally just dead. Well, I say I would be dead. My healing axe is actually keeping me alive, which is pretty funny. But I decided to just go ahead and effect clear it because, yeah, I just wanted to know what would happen, and I guess we all know now. Now that I have my radon gas, I can make the improved ender eye. The only problem is the last thing I actually need to make the emitter, platinum. Well, that's a problem. However, I was lucky enough to get some platinum from one of the Applied Energistics quests. That's a very nice part about that whole quest area. There's a ton of good rewards in there, including platinum, which is very nice. So I actually do have the platinum required to make the emitter I need to make the laser engraver for EV, which is required to make all sorts of new circuits and stuff. And for how complicated it was just to get some radon, guess what? We're still nowhere close to getting an Applied Energistics system. Well, the funny thing is I practically have it set up. There's just a lot more that I need to finish it off. You see, I need to make these Lapotron crystals, which are going to be very important for several things in EV and beyond. To make these things, it was a big mixture of other dusts. I had to make like the redstone energetic alloy that I had to make for my nanosuit, and then I had to combine that dust with lapis. On top of that, I had to use vibrant alloy to put it all together. And I don't have much vibrant alloy anymore, so that's quite rare. To make matters worse, constructing each Lapotron crystal requires 2 HV circuits. This thing is just draining my resource to make some stupid crystals. And if things weren't bad enough already, my EV assembly machine just refused to work. Well, it kept power failing, and that's because when you use a transformer, you actually lose a tiny bit of power, so it didn't have enough in the buffer to complete the recipe. That's a major problem. And one of the reasons I've kind of just been stuck with progression being so slow, because one of the things I was looking at earlier is trying to make an EV battery. For the longest time, I didn't think it was possible unless I did nuclear, because you need like samarium, whatever that resource is that you can only get, at least for now, from doing nuclear reactors. However, through the quest book, I actually figured out that you can make quad lithium batteries to power EV machines. They require 4 HV lithium batteries, so extremely expensive, and a bunch of other like transformers and wiring products. So it is ridiculous to make these things. I only made 2 of them, but I would say it's absolutely worth it if you have a situation like this where you just need a tiny bit of extra power, and this is perfect. That battery buffer was also extremely helpful when I had to use the laser engraver to finish off the crystals. So these Lapotron crystals have a ton of uses, like I already said. They're going to be important for some other machines. You'll definitely see those in the next episode, one of the most important buildings that I really want. But for now, I have to sacrifice them pretty much to my laser engraver to engrave them and get these chips, which I need to make fluid and Essentia storage ME components, of course. After all this time, I finally feel comfortable enough to actually start working on the ME system. I've been watching a ton of videos trying to figure out how it all works, because I will be perfectly honest, I don't have much experience with Applied Energistics. The furthest I've ever gotten is just building a simple ME system with some drives. I've never, yes, I know it sounds ridiculous with how much I've played, but I've never gotten very far into it, so I know nothing about stuff like the crafting, which auto crafting is essential for Gregtech, subnets, channels, all that important stuff that I'm actually going to need for this whole thing. From those videos, I learned a ton of crazy stuff. First of all, I wish I had literally known this from the start. You can just drag stuff from your NEI menu onto your main screen to do stuff with. One example is this, where I can actually format drives with a specific liquid that I want. So you've got like sulfuric acid, cetane boosted diesel, stuff like that. But you can also use it in Gregtech machines and hatches so you can lock specific things instead of having to bring a container of the liquid yourself, which is super handy. Like I said, I wish I'd known that from the start. That would have saved me hours of time. So that's definitely one of the biggest tricks I now know. And one of the coolest parts about the Applied Energistics system in Gregtech, since this is a way older version, they had to backport all sorts of things and add tons of new features. But apparently you can interact directly with like the liquid menu. So you can actually dump liquids and take liquids out of there using cells and containers and stuff like that. So it's pretty awesome, I have to say. Since I still don't understand everything about Applied Energistics, I mean, even now really, I was trying to work on a specific system, and I feel like this version that I'm trying does have a use at some point for something. It's definitely not the right way to make it just yet. Anyways, the main things I learned from all of this is, well, the most important of all, each controller, I believe its face, has 32 channels you can use. One of these dense cables can hold 32 channels. However, they can't connect to everything. All of the other smaller cables only have 8 channels, and those are used to connect like screens, input-output buses, and other stuff like that. Anyways, I was trying to do a subnet thing here, but this isn't like the right one, I guess. I did actually figure out the right way to do a subnet a bit later on. Just know that I'm still learning and have no clue what I'm actually doing. And after connecting some other machines, I decided to dig this massive hole in my base. Yes, I needed more space to work with stuff, and it's really weird seeing my entire power generation just exposed, because I'm so used to having this entire place just covered in a cave. So yeah, I was working on that. Another thing I was working on in the background is making more HV circuits. believe it or not, my supply is completely drained again. I chewed through 5 stacks because I had to make all sorts of new machines and stuff like that, and those Lapotron crystals were painful, so here we go, 4 more. Also, insanely important thing I learned. I think it's with a screwdriver, if you shift right click a machine or some interaction with the tool, you can actually allow it to output and input from the same side, which is what I was missing. You see, I still haven't upgraded my clean room, that's probably the funniest part so far, and figuring that out allows me to truly, or relatively automate circuits. I can throw all the parts in there and just leave it be. It outputs the output back into the container and it's good. As usual, I was scrolling through recipes for quite a while, and I found something I really want to make before I finish up this episode. I've known about this for a while since you can make it in MV. It's called the Algae Farm. It's a super cool but kind of expensive multi-block. It's basically just like a giant pool of water. The best part is that it requires 0 power or maintenance, so I love the sound of it. It's not even that expensive, it just takes a lot of all the resources I already have. It produces various types of algae, with higher tiers based on the machine hull tier, and I decided to go slightly crazy, and I want to try an EV tier, which is going to require just an insane amount of titanium. It was definitely like 14 or something higher than that stacks. It was a ton. That's because I wanted to make 2 of them, one next to each other. So I do save some by wall sharing, but you get the point. This is going to be expensive. So despite the fact this thing has a massive cost to first build, of course operating it is literally free, which is awesome. You can't really do too much with the various types of algae, but you can throw them into the chemical plant to start making different types of chemicals. Unfortunately, the lowest tier of algae, well, I don't remember all of that at this point. You get the most of it, obviously, but it's absolute garbage. You can only make methane with it, and I already have plenty of methane from my oil setup, so I don't need that. It's all of the other tiers I'm actually looking at. Before I explain that, I want to explain this block. It's called a reservoir hatch. It might be one of my new favorite things, honestly. It's quite expensive to make, requiring a bunch of EV pumps and all sorts of other stuff. However, it's well worth it in the end. The reservoir hatch gives you free water to any multi-block that you want. And yes, it's literally free infinite water. I know I have normal reservoirs, but those things only produce like 1 bucket or something like that a second, which is pretty slow. When you need tons of water, this is what you use. I'm going to use this reservoir hatch to fill up this multi-block because you don't actually need to feed it water. Again, it's still free. The only problem I noticed is that the machine really didn't like to work when the reservoir hatch wasn't there. I tried to switch it up with other tiers of hatch, even with water inside, and nothing worked. So I just duplicated the reservoir hatch because, I mean, it's wasted in this machine, literally. But if I can't use it for some reason, then you get the point. Now that it's finally done and working, I can properly explain why I wanted to build these things. You see, we get 3 tiers of algae currently. These are the first 3. The 4th is a little bit more rare, and the 5th, I'll get to that in a second. So the first one is just algae biomass. That's the garbage that just turns into methane. The green biomass has some uses. It can actually be processed in a couple of different ways. The brown biomass is similar, and the golden brown, well, same thing. Okay, the 4th final tiers can all be processed in different ways to get different things. What I'm trying to say is I wanted to make this setup to get infinite sulfuric acid for free. Okay, it's not 100% free because some of the other processes require power. You get the point. It's essentially free sulfuric acid. Even though I already get some from my oil setup, I'm gonna need a whole lot more for future things. So I decided to set it up now and get it over with. By using a macerator and throwing some of my green algae in there, unfortunately you can't do it with the most basic one, that would have been nice, I can get stuff called compost. These machines can only take Gregtech compost that you get from this algae, and it's actually super cool. It increases the tier of the machine by 1. Unfortunately, one HV macerator can only support one of these machines, not 2. But essentially, this allows me to get IV instead of EV materials. This is great because it allows me to get red algae, and that's the stuff I'm looking for later on at least. Essentially, when I process this, it can give me some other really high tier chemicals, including acetone, which is going to be pretty awesome. It also gives me a slightly higher chance to get some of the golden brown and brown algae that I really need. So yeah, it's going to be awesome. Now that I have my Applied Energistics network, I can actually connect everything together and automate this super easily, which is so nice. I really should have gotten to Applied Energistics the second I got into EV, but oh well. Anyways, there are a couple ways I can actually make sulfuric acid. Well, okay, only 2 options. Golden brown and brown algae, or brown algae and green algae. Since green is a lower tier, it takes way longer to produce sulfuric acid, but the flip side is I don't produce that much golden brown, so I'm going to be swapping to the lower tier recipe later on. On top of that, I had to upgrade the hatches of this chemical plant so that I could make use of the more parallels I get. I used pretty high tier materials for this thing, but only went for HV machine hulls and Canthal coils because I'm pretty much out of nichrome coils at this point, and I certainly will be after next episode. It also requires pipe casings. I don't remember what that gives. I think pipe casing is actually the parallel. Coil is the speed, machine hull, and maybe the outer casing, the stainless steel. I think those are like what you can craft in it. I don't remember. They all have something to do with tiers of parallel or whatever. Long story short, I went with titanium because I could. Anyways, it was operating decently for a tiny bit, but I quickly ran into a major problem. That is actually importing both of the algae that I actually needed to run this machine. Because it consumes more of one than another, well, this is a problem that comes up all the time with machines, but it imports too much of one and then the input gets blocked so it can't input the other one it needs. So that is a major problem. Now, I have a feeling there's definitely another way to do this with the export bus. However, Gregtech has some very special machinery, and this is where and when I realized just how important it's gonna be. There's this thing called a stocking input bus, ME. I can make this right now, but it is extremely expensive to make one of these things. It requires an HV machine hull, and then the HV bus, and a bunch of acceleration cards, and an ME interface. I mean, all the Applied Energistics stuff is stupidly expensive. These cards I only got from a loot bag, because they require platinum plates to make. So yeah, this thing, insanely expensive. However, after I learned just what this can do, it's absolutely worth it. And I also learned this from the videos I've watched, but essentially this is like an input bus, right? Or I'm talking about like the machine port, not the Applied Energistics item. But essentially, you put it on a machine and you hook it up to your Applied Energistics network. The coolest part is that you can access any item from your storage system instantly. You don't have to worry about placing an export bus. You just connect it to the network. It's insane. And then you can choose like what goes into the machine. It doesn't have an actual like inventory buffer. It takes it right out of your storage, which also saves you a lot of lag, especially later in the game. So yeah, these are insanely important to have. On top of that, they have an internal ghost circuit, which is very nice. This means that it's going to be a million times easier to make sulfuric acid instead of having to balance the other color ones with a normal input bus. So yeah, that is pretty awesome, I have to say. Alright, at this point I'd watched some more videos in detail and actually understood it at this point. And what I was trying earlier, well, again, it has its uses, I still don't understand it, but this makes a lot more sense. Alright, I'm gonna need a couple things for this to work. A couple of interfaces, specifically an ME interface and then a dual interface for fluids. Then storage buses, a standard storage bus and a fluid storage bus. Essentially what I'm doing here is called a subnet, like a proper subnet. And it's quite simple, like once you just see it and understand it. I have a quartz fiber cable connecting them so that power can get transferred, but the wires aren't directly touching. And essentially what this is doing is taking 2 channels from the main network and then turning them into an entirely new network by using those interfaces and storage buses. Just imagine that the red network is now looking at the white network, and the red network can now access everything in the white network. I know it sounds a bit confusing, but once you do it, it makes so much more sense. But of course, with these 2 channels, it's just a very basic network. Even though I do have access to fluid and items, I only have what's called a dumb network where it has 8 channels only. So I actually have to give it a controller to give me some more channels to work with. And yeah, that's how you make a simple subnet. And the awesome thing about having a new network is that, well, I can just connect a ton of things to this 32 channel wire and it sends everything back to my main network only using 2. It's wonderful. So I'll be using this to actually connect everything in my oil refining area back to my primary network. I also haven't even mentioned a couple of other tools I got. This network visualization tool is unique to Gregtech. It might be in some other rare packs, but this carries me a ton because it allows you to see all of your networks and how many channels everything is taking, which is super helpful. On top of that, a while back I made this thing called a color applicator. You have to put it into like an ME chest to access the inventory, and you can actually put dyes in there. As long as you don't use it to dye anything besides Applied Energistics wires, it uses nothing. So you have infinite color changing potential for Applied Energistics. It's very helpful, and that's how I'm going to separate my network colors. I'll have white for my primary bus, and then I'll do other colors based on other things. Long term, I will have to add other color main buses, and eventually I'll be able to do wireless, but I don't think I have the energy for that right now. Wireless chews through an insane amount of power. I did some testing. All that's really left to do now is to connect all of these machines up to my network. I had to add some reservoirs for specific machines that require water, and it's just that simple. I import everything back to my network, and yeah, I love Applied Energistics now that I truly understand it. It is insanely powerful. Unfortunately in Gregtech though, it is just mind-bogglingly expensive. I can't wait till I play another Modpack, which I'm actually going to do after this episode. That's going to be the next Minecraft video, and I just can't wait to see how cheap Applied Energistics is compared to Gregtech. Like, I'm so used to their insane and complicated recipes in Gregtech that playing a normal Modpack is going to give me whiplash. The only issue I ever noticed with the subnets is another one I created pretty much after I ended recording. I don't know if that's some of the clips I have for next episode or what, but I made one for my area where I just started making sulfuric acid and I have all my power because I needed more channels over there. Long story short, I learned that subnets don't work well when you have like storage buses. What's up, Charlie? You're never in here to get recorded. What do you have to say? Really? Now that I think about it, there are certain situations where you have to make like a 2-way storage bus and interface system. I'm guessing that's why it didn't work properly, but essentially I had a storage bus for the toluene, and that didn't interact properly with like my main network. I guess I can see why now. So yeah, that's the only thing to note. I guess I'll just be importing most liquids into my actual main storage system. And the final problem I wanted to note with Applied Energistics that I noticed at the very least is it doesn't seem to play well with Steam for some reason. I guess, okay, that kind of makes sense actually. I thought it was bugged, but it might be disabled for some reason because it could be really overpowered to teleport tons of steam super fast, but whatever. I couldn't get steam out of my network into one of my machines, no matter what I tried. Like, I literally tried all of the steam things and dragging them, even adding them to my inventory. It just wasn't working. so I ended up just going with a fluid heater to make my own steam. It's cheap enough and doesn't require much power, especially if you're not using that steam for power itself. I just had to import some water and fuel, which, considering where I had to build this, that's not a problem at all. I just wanted to note that it doesn't seem to export normal steam well for some reason, because I looked at it, and in the system, it is counted as Railcraft steam. Even though I deleted that drive, made a new one, and only put Gregtech steam from a Gregtech boiler, it still counts it as Railcraft, so I honestly have no clue why it does this. Someone in the comments probably knows though. It sucks a tiny bit, but I found an easy solution around it. But I believe that's going to be the end of this episode. There's nothing else to really talk about, even though I have some other clips. I kind of want to save those for the next episode. This is getting long enough as is. I was pretty much just cleaning everything up, deleting a lot of old buildings, and then hooking stuff up to my network. Nothing crazy. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed. And as usual, I always appreciate you guys watching. So thank you very much. And a special thank you to all of my channel members. The support helps me out a ton. And this is going to be Enzo from LookIntoGaming, signing out.